Hi everyone, welcome back. It's both of us for the first time
in forever.
2 years. Because last year there was a lot of sickness going around in both of our families, so we didn't end up getting together at Christmas, but here we are together now. For the first time in a long time. But we wanted to do a fun tag video for you today. This is the In or Out book tag. It is 26 questions that are all book tropes, and we just have to talk about whether we think they're in or they're out. And I imagine we will disagree on some of them. That just makes it better. And we originally saw Well Traveled Books do this on her channel, but I guess it was originally created by Rick McDonald. So I will link both of those down below if you want to watch their versions of the tag. So we will start with the first trope of reading the last page first.
No, why would you do that?
Yeah, that's just insane to me.
Never.
To be fair, some last pages don't actually reveal that much. It's more the conclusionary aspect of it. But why? Why would you ever do that?
In a world full of opportunities to be spoiled, and where the spoiler alert has been such a phrase that has been used over time, why? Why would you do it? We go to great lengths to avoid being spoiled.
Yeah.
I don't really understand what this gets you unless you really want to know how it ends before it begins. And I'm just not that person.
Yeah, neither of us are that kind of person. Number 2, enemies to lovers.
You're gonna have to go first.
I think I'm an in on this one. Now, of course, I have to caveat it with something. Enemies to lovers, it cannot be that he or she, I guess, whoever in that relationship is like abusive and using really derogatory language, and then, oh my god, all of a sudden they love each other. That's not what I'm coming from. I'm coming from the angle of like, they work at the same company and they're butting heads, or they work at rival companies and they're butting heads on this project, or they have to learn to work together in some sort of environment, or they were like sports rivals. That's the kind of enemies to lovers I'm talking about. We need to keep it a little healthy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can be in on this one if it is well done. This isn't even a limb to go out on to say that I have a lot more experience with this.
That's what I was just about to say, is that you read a lot more romance than I do. And this is a pure romance trope.
I do, and so, you know, I might not be reading the last page first to pick up, you know, I want to know what's going to happen. You don't need to when you read romance. You know exactly what's going to happen from the beginning of every book. Because it's the same every time with different facets and characteristics. But I think, and don't come for me if I get this wrong, but there is a subgenre, the grumpy sunshine.
Okay, I'm aware of this.
Subgenre, and I think that's generally the one that works the best, because when one of them is grumpy and the other one is delightful, they often don't do well in the beginning together. And that, I think, makes for the most tasteful and also non-abusive enemies to lovers situation. I have more to say about that, but
that could be like a whole video almost, you know? Like, there's so many subtakes on enemies to lovers that you could do a whole video about it. Number 3, dream sequences. I hate dream sequences, so this is a big out for me. Every time a dream sequence comes up in a book, I glaze over. It's like whenever there's a recipe in a book, I just don't care.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me either. I've written a dream sequence, so I think they have their place. But I do agree that they are not often well done. I could be in on these, but I need them to be thoughtful and they need to be moving the plot along. I feel like often they are looked at by editors, of which I know zero, as like, but you could fill this in here. And the point of a good editor is to be like, this doesn't work. And often they're used as filler, or people think that they're adding something to the plot, and
I feel like they never do. Yeah, I just feel like it's just a waste of text, because it's a dream sequence. Maybe it pushes the character in a new direction, but half the time it's just like, okay, like,
if it's like a fantasy book,
it makes more sense in that context.
If something is gonna, like Percy Jackson, I'm pretty sure at some point in those books there's a dream sequence in Percy Jackson. Totally makes sense.
I read them so long ago.
No, I read them in 2018, and I'm almost 100% that there's at least one in that, and it works. It
makes sense there.
But if we're talking like regular contemporary fiction, no, that's not.
Number 4 is love triangles. Very overdone at this point.
Yeah, these happen all the time.
But I'm okay with them, I'd say, still. I mean, are they ever truly a love triangle, or are they a love arrow thing, right? I mean, there's definitely more spicy romances now where it is, in fact, a love triangle, but I feel like in the days when we were, like, reading young adult fiction and the early days of BookTube...
Like, look at the Hunger Games. Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's not a love triangle, that's a love arrow thing.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, what we really mean with this kind of trope. And I don't mind them, but at this point, they're definitely just overdone. I think it is more of a YA thing.
I would more prefer to read Enemies to Lovers and see that done really well.
Yes, I think so
than
too.
throw another person in the mix and be like, oh, let's see who is gonna get rejected this time.
Number 5, cracked spines.
Wow, okay.
I don't love them.
For clarity, this is the spine of the physical book.
Yes, yeah. Don't go dirty with that.
No, I was thinking, like, medical drama.
Oh, no.
No one's gonna think that. But we switched from, like, tropes and things to, like...
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a trope in the sense that it's been an argument on BookTube for so long. I think that's more what I take from this.
Gotcha.
Because we did a pet peeves video back in the day, and was one of our pet peeves not cracked spines? Did that come up? I mean, this was like, we filmed this a while ago, so
yeah.
I mean, maybe I've chilled out a little bit since then. But if it's one of those mass market paperbacks, it's gonna happen.
Sure.
Like, the spine has to crack. But if, like, someone borrows a book from me and it comes back with a really big cracked spine, that annoys me.
This is why, if I have a book that I like, that I'm going to talk about, that I feel like I even might remotely lend out to someone, I will go and get another copy. And it will not be a new copy.
Yeah.
Because I anticipate that I will not get books back in the condition that I lend them out. I also feel like, as somebody who does not purposefully endeavor to break the spine, the very first moment that you either feel it or you hear it happen, and you're like, oh, there's just such a sense of immediate disappointment. If the question is, why do we care about this so much? Because they're just physical objects that can be replaced, and isn't the story going to be the same? Yeah, but it's nothing like having your original copy of the thing and then seeing that kind of start to
because that's not the way that it was received. Yeah. Or, if somebody borrows it, they didn't get it in that condition. So,
right. This is why we can't have nice things.
Number 6, back to my small town.
Here, okay. I'm over this. This is out, but that is because I have a friend who genuinely loves the Hallmark Christmas movies, and we have watched a lot of them together in the last 2 months. And almost always it's somebody either going back to their small hometown or back to their parents' home that they then have to buy or figure out how to sell, or suddenly there's been an inn that's left to you. So I don't know. I don't think
you're a little oversaturated.
Yeah, I'm oversaturated, and I don't think that small towns, and I live near several, are really portrayed correctly.
I think for me, I'm not oversaturated on the Hallmark movie romance thing, so when I think of Back to My Small Town, I think maybe more of like a mystery thriller setting, or a literary fiction sort of angle, and so I would say I'm more in on them, but it's also just because, I'm not oversaturated with it. Number 7, monsters are regular people.
I'm going to need you to explain this.
See, I'm not totally sure either, because I purposely haven't watched either of the videos that I saw for this. I haven't watched them in ages because I didn't want it to influence our answers. So, monsters are regular people. I interpret this as not only the, like, harder romance books, but also, like, the weird... There's been some weird literary fiction books about people turning into, like, sharks or fish or something.
Oh my gosh, yeah!
So that's...
Shark Heart! Great book! Find it!
That's what I'm thinking of. I think it's, like, monsters are real people. They're turning into these creatures, or it's, like, a fantasy setting, and it's, like, this guy can transform into something dark and dangerous, because that's a big romance trope. So I'm gonna say I'm out on this one. I really don't like that.
Yeah, the other way to think about it, I guess, is like capitalism and the evil villain, and like the bad people have been the monsters the whole time, which I don't think they're going for here. But no, the thing that comes to mind first for me is Percy Jackson, Because in the very first book, like, his math teacher is a literal monster thing from Greek mythology, and only he can see her as that monster. I'm over it. If I want monsters, I will get a book purposefully about monsters.
Number 8 is no paragraph breaks. I want paragraph breaks. That's an out. That's out for me. I don't want to look at a wall of text like that. If I flip a page, flip to a new set of pages and it's just straight text the whole way down, I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I can't.
Yeah. I don't honestly think we see this all that often. I think contemporary publishing...
It doesn't happen much in contemporary, I'd say. But there are people, they write like the stream of consciousness books or you're reading a classic and it'll be just walls of text where they're like going back and talking about... What are you looking for?
I want to pull the copy of... what's that book you hate?
Oh, Prayer for Omini?
No. The other one. Kazuo Ishiguro.
Oh, Never Let Me Go.
Yes! Because I feel like that book has... some walls. There are paragraph breaks in the way that book is published, but it does have huge walls of text. You know who else does? Jane Austen, queen of not using punctuation. But I think just generally in the modern day, contemporary, we don't see that very often, and I too am against it.
Yeah.
Bye.
Number 9 is multi-generational sagas.
Oh, that's like all I read. That's all I pick out for book club. Homegoing by Yajasi. Great example.
And I do like that. That's a good book. I'm definitely in on multi-generational sagas. Not that the book has to be massive. Like, Homegoings is not a massive book. But there are ones that are quite thick. And maybe I wouldn't necessarily pick those specific ones up. But I do enjoy a book that has all of the, the stuff through the years and all the connections with the family members, because usually when you do get towards the end, you're really emotionally involved.
Absolutely.
And so it's just, you really feel something when you finish it.
And you like genealogy too.
Yes,
so
I do, yes.
Appeals to your interest in genealogy.
Yeah, and the history and how things change, especially if where they are and the things that are happening in the world around them really affect the story. That would make me like it even more, rather than being very insular and all just about like the familial interactions.
Gotcha. See, I come from the theater, so I just like the drama.
Number 10 is rereading.
Oh, 100% all the time. This is like a person with anxiety go-to. Yeah, 100%.
Get that familiarity.
And yeah, well, you can pick up new things each time. I don't think that people always do. How many times have I read the Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban? Probably more than 20. Am I picking up new things every time? No. But I knew what was going to happen.
It's a comfort read now.
Yeah.
Because, you know every little detail, basically, at this point. Yeah, I definitely don't reread as much as you do, but I have been doing it a bit more than I used to. I just feel the pressure of, there's so many things to read out there, so much that I'm interested in, and I don't necessarily find rereading something comforting. Like, I don't go to it from that angle. It's more like, oh, I just really want to experience the story again because it has been 10 years. Like, usually if I'm rereading something, it's because it's been 10 years or so.
Yeah.
To be fair, I did reread the book of The Unnamed Midwife, and I was like 2 years between reading it, but that's not a comforting book. It's post-apocalyptic, it's very intense, and it was because I was picking up the next book, and I loved it the first time I read it, and I think I actually liked it a bit more the second time because I could appreciate more of the details because I was picking up new things, and I did know kind of what to expect, and so I could appreciate the flow of the story a bit more. So rereading is still in, but it's not, you're like it's so in, and I'm like, yeah, it's an in.
I wind up thinking about books later on too, not to bring up the Clan Kendrick series once again, but I do wind up thinking about all of the layering that has to happen, because that's a 6-book set. Then when the next one comes off the holds list and I start to read it, and they're talking about what happened in 1 or 2 before, or how these 2 people got together, or, oh, do you remember that thing that happened 3 books ago? And I'm like, no, actually, there's just so much that washes over you in books like that, that I don't remember. And then I'm like, maybe I should just start at the beginning again so that I remember all of the details. And that's how that starts to happen.
Number 11 is artificial intelligence.
Like as an author or in the story?
I think it's in the story. If it's an author, it's a hell no. That is a strong out. If it's in the story, artificial intelligence, I can, in like a sci-fi where it is the thing that is running the ship or the thing that the characters do interact with, I don't mind that. I just rewatched, this is not a book, but I just rewatched Interstellar, and like they have the two robots in that movie that communicate kind of like human beings do, and I really enjoy that interaction.
So what's the difference between AI and robots? Because this calls into question for me, like Marvin the Paranoid Android from Hitchhiker's Guide, which I'm all about him. He's great. Is he AI?
I don't know.
Because I don't feel like this is my lane. I probably don't read enough in this genre anymore.
He is very reactive, though, and he very much has his own personality.
Yeah.
So I'd say he leans, in my mind, he leans more AI, but I don't actually know what's the delineation there.
Like, what about C-3PO? R2-D2? That I don't know. I don't know. If we're talking about generative AI, let's not put that in our books right now.
No.
Just, that's a call for all
Hard
authors.
no. Number 12, drop caps.
Oh.
Seems like a pleasant little thing.
If they are... That's like a historical fiction thing. That is, it has to be thematically appropriate. If you're just gonna drop caps in contemporary fiction, I don't
might be a bit much.
see a reason for that. I would rather you do like a big chapter number than a drop cap.
Oh, okay.
But if we're talking about like Heathcliff on the moors, sure, put a drop cap in there in every reprint of that.
Drop cap. Yeah, I'd say I'm in on that, but no strong feelings either way. And number 13, happy endings.
Listen.
Yeah. I think I know your answer for this.
I would prefer that the ending did not upset me. And that I pretty much knew from the outset that it was going to be fine. Listen, these are the times we live in. There's so much where we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. At least give me a book where I don't walk away feeling like I want to throw it across the room. So I'm all in on a happy end for characters. But if it does not make sense with the rest of the story, like I just read this book this year called The Music Shop, and I don't know that the happy ending really fit with that because it felt really jammed in. If it's not going to feel right with the rest of everything else, then don't give that to me just because you feel like that's how you need to end the book.
I definitely don't feel as strongly about happy endings as you do because I don't read romance or, go back to that back to the same stories like you do.
You don't want to be happy.
I like to feel melancholy. I like to have some satisfaction, but I love a book where maybe you get some happy endings or you get these two characters that meet up after not seeing each other for a long time kind of thing, and it's a big deal, but maybe there's something sad that happened around that. So I like it when things don't totally get wrapped up in a nice bow because that's not reality, and I do enjoy reading books that mirror reality to some degree and they're not just purely like squishy feel good all the time.
Yeah, this is a nonfiction reader, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, like I'm used to things being a mixed bag at the end. So I'm not saying I'm out on happy endings, but I'm definitely not like digging for them.
Why get you a melancholy book when life will do it for you? Item number 14, plot points that only converge at the end.
I think I gotta say I'm in on this. The payoff is so good sometimes and then it just blows your mind and it makes it worth it. And then maybe that's the kind of book that you do reread in 5-10 years because you then go back and you notice all of the hints that were dropped in there to bring them together.
Knives Out, Glass Onion are actually really great examples of that. Probably also like Miss Marple, Agatha Christie, I feel like had this on lock. And that's why people return to her books all the time to reread and reread and reread. Mysteries are a really good example of that. But yeah, I can be on board with that. Yeah, absolutely. Item 15 is detailed magic systems. I live with a person who would live for a detailed magic system, and there are often a lot of them being discussed in our house. But listen, if I'm going to have to learn a lot of new words for really basic stuff. And I don't have that kind of time. Crescent City is a great example. Don't come for me. I spent the whole first book being like, I don't have time for this. This is taking me too long. So it's a no from me, dog.
I am more interested in a detailed magic system. I'd say it's an in for me, but do I actually pick up that many fantasy books and read them? No. But do I love the idea of a detailed magic system? Yes. So
Gotcha.
I gotta say in.
I care less about the magic and more about the system of government. That's actually
like
what
political
upsets
angle.
me. If it's not clear to me how the government in this place functions, then hard pass. I could care less about who's a wizard or who's a whatever. Item 16 are classic fantasy races. I don't actually think I know what that means.
I think they're just talking about like humans, elves, dwarves, that kind of thing.
Got it.
That's what I'm taking from that. And I'd say I'm in with those. I have read Lord of the Rings, to be fair. I read it a long time ago, but like that is one of those situations where I think the movies are better than the books. The books can be a bit of a slog sometimes, but it did have all, that's a lot of what people think about when they think about classic fantasy, and it's got all those characters in there, and I was fine with that.
I feel ambivalent about this. So, sure, it can be in. I don't think either of us really read a lot in that lane.
No, not very often.
Yeah. Item 17, Unreliable Narrators, which I am 100% in on this. I am here for it. I like to pick them apart. Yes, 100%. Nothing more needs to be said. I don't know why we don't have more Unreliable Narrators. Probably because they're so difficult to write.
I am going to go the exact opposite. Unreliable narrators are an out for me. That is definitely a trope that I am so done with. It's often paired with like the alcoholic woman kind of thing. That I am so done with. But unreliable narrators, I don't want to be... I just don't like feeling like I'm getting fed all this false information, but you don't even know it, and then having to go back later and be mad about it. Like, I just don't like that feeling that I'm left with. So an unreliable narrator for me is just not something that I wouldn't willingly pick out a book if I knew that that was a huge plot point for it.
Yeah, and I do see the inherent problem now in a more contemporary lens with using the unreliable narrator trope as a way to talk about really serious either psychological or social issues. The one that comes to mind is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. That I think was actually a really nice balance of someone who was struggling mentally and emotionally, but also due to that was an unreliable narrator. But I agree, yeah, I think it's being overused in the way that you're describing. But on the whole, why not turn every book into a mystery? Item 18, Evil Protagonists. I feel like you're not going to be in on this.
I think I'm more in on it than I am with unreliable narrators. Evil Protagonists, it makes me think of the series by Marie Lu, The Young Elites.
Oh, yeah.
And our main character in that, she's got her sister, she's got people around her, they all have powers that they've acquired through this disease that went around a number of years ago. And she, as a character, is very gray. But I think she still does care about her sister, so there is that little bit that kind of you can really latch on to. Like, I can relate to that, I have a sister. So, is she pure evil? No. But she is very misunderstood, and there's a lot of, like, evilness kind of, I think, surrounding her as a character. And I did like that. So I think I can be in on an evil protagonist depending on the type of book that it is.
Okay. I don't know that I've read any books where the protagonist is like 100% evil. But like you were saying,
it would be very hard to do that because you a lot of times you're writing to have people care about the character and like their decisions and what happens to them.
And this is what I hear a lot in the library book club is people come to the table and they're like, I didn't finish this because I couldn't find anything to like about any of these characters and I didn't care about any of them. I don't necessarily need that. I'm happy to hate this person all the way through, I guess. So I could be in on this, but I honestly don't think I've read a book where the main character is in like 100% all in on evil.
Yeah, and I think that would be hard.
Next we have 19, which is The Chosen One. And I think based on the fact that both of us really launched our reading careers, if you might say, on Harry Potter, we're pretty much okay with The Chosen One.
I think it's still very much a thing these days too, is that there's that one person who's going to be the one to save us all, and maybe it doesn't play out in exactly the same way that we're kind of thinking about, where they're the only ones who have the magical power or the magical skill or the special connection or whatever. Maybe they're just that one person who's brave enough to do it, which is kind of a cooler angle, but still I'm still in on it, but that is one of the most overdone tropes in book existence.
Yeah. I don't think you can write a dystopian book today without having that. I'm trying to think of an example where it totally didn't work, and I think it was The Cartographers. I've talked about The Cartographers a lot in the last two years, mostly because I did not enjoy that book and I really wanted to. But the main character in that has kind of she's acting in the role of the chosen one, and it does not work. It just feels like, here's a lady that we dumped a lot of information on in the main time of her grief, and now we're going to force her to fix everything. And that does not go great.
I guess we're in on it. But yeah, I mean, to go back to the dystopian...
I don't think I'm in on it.
Okay, you're done with it.
I think I'm...
See, I thought at the beginning when you were talking about how we were raised up on Harry Potter, we were
and I think I changed my opinion as we had this conversation.
In the last 1 minute, you changed your opinion.
Yeah, no, I can see the journey, I can see the trajectory, and I'm not saying that Harry Potter was the first book to ever have a chosen one. Obviously, look at Frodo, but
it is very overdone, so I'm a tiny bit in, but it really has to be the right kind of book.
Yeah. Our 20th prompt: when the protagonist dies.
So obviously this can get into spoiler territory, but I'm thinking of Divergent, of course, when I think of these books. Actually, I have that right here. I am thinking of the Divergent series and what happens at the very end there, and
that's a really special case, though, because it wasn't well done.
Well, do you have an example where it was well done?
No.
Okay.
But now that you've brought it up, that's all I can think about.
Well,
so
that's
if you
only...
haven't read Divergent, I'm going to stop you right there.
I took it better than some other people did, but I don't think I like it when the protagonist dies. Unless it's a multi-generational saga kind of thing and the person has died of old age or something like that. But how it was done with Divergent series, I'm not into that. So I'm going to say generally I'm an out.
And I do think that does happen a little bit in Never Let Me Go. That it did work there.
But I didn't like that book.
I know. We know. They all know that. But I do think it worked. But I think overall I'm generally listen, I want to be happy.
And that does not lead to happiness.
No.
Unless the protagonist is evil.
Unless the person is evil. Yeah. So I think it has a time and a place, but generally I'm mostly out on it. I don't need to sit through that. 21. Really long chapters.
Nope, don't like them. I'm an out. I feel like I'm making so much more progress when the chapters are shorter, and I find it very motivating.
So it's about efficiency.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Got it. Efficiency and morale. Yeah, I know I can get on board with that. What's the purpose of a really long chapter? Also, is it one really long chapter, or are they all really long chapters? Because chapters, a good editor, right, should get you to chunk out your chapters as an author. That will A, be enough to get through what's necessary for the scene and the plot, and B, I think also keep the reader's attention. So what necessitates a chapter being really, really long? I don't know. Yeah. Other than just this is the style of my prose, in which case all of the chapters are really long.
Yeah, and this says chapters, it is plural. So that to me implies that the entire book is like that with really long chapters, and maybe they have those little break things, the paragraph breaks in there, but no, I definitely prefer shorter chapters. They don't have to be super short. They don't have to be a couple pages. They can be 10, 15 pages.
Moderate.
But I don't want a 30+ page chapter most of the time.
Yeah. 22. French flaps.
I'm into French flaps. They're nice.
Who
doesn't like French flaps? I'm more bothered by the deckled edges or whatever. That one, but the French flaps, I love that. It's nice.
If you want a dusty book, those are the edges for you. Because those things pick up dust.
But in terms of the flaps and whatnot, it makes the book feel a little fancier, a little elevated,
Absolutely.
Yeah, class up a book, give us some French flaps. I'm in.
Which brings us to 23, which is Deckled Edges.
Didn't even realize this was going to be the next one, but yeah, I'm kind of out on Deckled Edges. I think I prefer the smooth page look. It's not going to keep me from picking up a book or purchasing a book because there's deckled edges, but I'm just, I prefer the smooth pages for sure.
I could go either way, honestly. I like them. I think when they give them to historical fiction or
that makes sense.
Period drama,
for the feel of the book,
totally makes sense. But I think oftentimes they do that just to kind of drive the price up, which I'm not on board with. Just make the paper smooth. The book is the book. And also they do collect a lot of dust. So if you're a collector, let me tell you, it gets in there. The book pages face inward and it still gets in there. We're coming toward the end. Item 24 is signed copies by the author.
I've never cared. I've never cared that much. I have a couple books that are signed by the author, but it's never been this thing that I've coveted. So I know that there's certain circles and collectors and stuff. Obviously, having an author sign a copy of their book, especially if they're particularly famous, can really make a book worth something. But I don't know. It's never. I'm not against it, but it's certainly not something that I'm going to go out of my way to try and get.
Yeah, I'm not going to seek it out. Actually, unless it's one of the Green brothers, because they do tend to sign the whole first printing, or a certain amount of the first printing, and it's very easy to get your hands on a signed copy, and why wouldn't you? If you're going to buy that book anyway, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, if it basically falls into your lap, if you're making the effort to get the book when it's first published, sure. But
or if I'm going to go and get a book signed by an author, like my copy of The Marriage Plot by Jeffrey Eugenides, like, it's written to me. He crossed his own name out and wrote my name at the top. It was very cute. So in that case, yeah, I'm definitely going to keep that. But when I go to buy a book, am I going to go look for a signed copy? Probably not. Unless I'm giving it as a gift and I know that person is really all in on that author.
Yeah, that makes sense in like a gift scenario.
Yeah. Item number 25 is dog-earing the pages.
I don't like it. It's fine if it's your own book and you want to do it. Once again, we're trying to be chill here. It's your book. You can do what you want with it. But for me, I don't like dog-earing pages. I would rather stick a receipt in there, a bookmark, or use tabs if it needs to be marked. Like I've got my little sticky tabs that I use, but I don't like dog-earing pages.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot like the spine thing. And just to see the crease come in, I don't know. It feels like we're not being nice to our objects.
Yeah.
I will say if you find like a really old, tattered, dog-eared copy of a book that's used, it can be cool to buy that just to recognize that like, oh, this was someone's.
Because usually they've underlined it too or made notes, and it could be interesting to read it through and see what this other person picked up on.
So as an object, great idea. I'm certainly not going to do it myself. Especially if I've gone out to go and purchase a book, because I don't really buy a lot of books. That's not my thing anymore. Now lastly, and certainly not least, item number 26, chapter titles instead of numbers.
I think I prefer the numbers.
I don't just do both.
Yeah, you could do both.
Just do both. Chapter 1, The Boy Who Lived. Like what it works.
But generally, if let's say they don't have numbers or whatever, and they have the fancy titles in there, I mean, I generally only read books that just have the chapter numbers. I definitely would prefer the numbers over just a creative title for the chapter.
Agree.
Yeah. So I guess in this case, this would be an out because it's the chapter titles instead of numbers. And in any situation, I want the number there.
Like, give me a reference point.
Exactly.
Come on. You know,
progress, efficiency, motivation.
That's what we're reading for is efficiency and motivation. I'm trying to think of a good example where like just chapter titles has been used, and I just don't think people want that on the whole. What's the benefit of not having the number?
I don't know.
So that you're not taken out of the story by recognizing that you're reading a book? How is that possible? And that's the end. That's all 26 items.
So if you have thoughts yourself on any of these tropes that we discussed, or maybe you have good examples for certain things that maybe we couldn't think of a good example for, leave them in the comments below.
In the meantime, anything that you want to know about us is probably in the description. Thanks so much for watching. It's great to see you both from the same place.
Hey.
I hope you're having lovely weeks and lovely lives. And that brings this video to
a close.